continue. The best of our ability. So the Shaila was, why do we say Kenti Alonu? Punkt by this pasuk only of Lehudim Moishe Sichos, and the answer was in Pashtus. Pashtus, he says the answer is because the pasuk is speaking in the past tense. I can't even say it. Trying to say it. Thank you. The past tense. And so therefore we have to say Kenti Alonu. But this beer is not satisfactory because we find other psukim also that speak of salvation, and they're also past tense. We don't say Kenti Alonu. So what was his answer? Very big answer. In Shutish Mikra, that Kenti Alonu is not actually an addition. Because the whole present tense of Purim is in the Megillah itself. The Megillah says that Yemei Purim ha'ela will be forever. It'll never pass, and the reference to it will never end. So the Megillah itself is saying, so when we say Kenti Alonu, we're not adding something, we're saying this one. Because this is a unique Kenti Alonu one. Can you just read the pasuk? You're not reading the whole context of the Megillah. So Kenti Alonu is really bringing to bear the rest of the psukim there, and we don't find any other such Yeshua that it's the pasuk itself says that it's forever. That's the nakud of the answer. Clear? So it's not really a hisofa. We're not adding something. That's really a pirush. Making clear as we say the pasuk, what does it mean here? Here, this is eternal forever, as the Megillah itself says. Now, this is further underscored. He said it is base. What is further underscored? The eternity and the eternal relevance of Purim in Drashas Chazal on this pasuk. How so? What are the Drashas Chazal? Oire is Torah, Simchas Yom Tov Sasan is Milah. And Yikar is Tefillin. These, of course, are all ongoing. On the contrary, they're more year-round than Tefillin. Than Purim, because they're not learning so much, etc. So we see the eternal relevance in Drashas Chazal also. Then came the whole Arichas. The Torah started the whole thing here. The Torah is Torah Achas. So what do you mean by that? To say, what does he want to say by the Torah is Torah Achas? What was the whole last part of the discussion? Was to say that the Pirush Hadrush is not something else. But they're all connected in that they're all interconnected. The part of this corresponds, he says, to the Dalad Oilamis. And the Pshat is not that Atzilus is somewhere else. Atzilus is here. Question of whether concealed or revealed, but present. And that's illustrated by Moishe Rabbeinu, who's walking Atzilus Lamata. So that's what we're up to. We're up to Vatam. You have the same numbers as me, page 136? Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, so second, try and follow. I'm just reading the English to expedite things. And the reason why it is so in creation, in Olamus, that they're all not just integrated, but currently present, is because the Olamus themselves are a result of David looking into Torah. David looked into Torah and created the world. And hence, the various parts of Torah, of Drush, of Soid, Drush, Remez, and Pshat, are not in such a way that the part that Sod is in its own world. And Pshat is another derech, he says, even. And there's no connection. B'chatzonis, it is that way. The different drachim, the parallel universes. But the Pnimit, it's not. It's not. They're all interconnected. That means that's what Chassidus reveals. Chassidus, that's the whole Inyon Shateres Chassidus, right? The Chassidus reveals the etzem of Torah, and therefore we see how all the manifestations are connected and interwoven and present one and the other, even on their own worlds. They are not. They're not. They're different language. They have different. They're parallel. Something al pi drush, not pi rembes, is not pi Kabbalah, is not the same as al pi pshat. But Pnimis it is tzad etzem. Like it says in the Zohar, continuing the text, number 14. Like it says in the Zohar that the Soid is what Soid? Like it's nishmasa and nishmasa of the guf, which is the simple level of Torah. In other words, drush or remes is neshama, is the deeper level. And what Soid? Neshama and neshama. Now what do we see? Like we see in the body and the neshama of a person, that every part of and every point of the body, the whole neshama is there. I'm sorry. First of all, a part of neshama, but then probing deeper, the whole neshama, including the shmasa and the neshmasa, present in every part of the guf, which is the parallel of the guf, is pshat, right? So much so we cannot distinguish and say that the body is independent and the neshama is independent when a person is alive. It's one thing, and in the guf, all the levels of neshama and every part of the guf and every part of the neshama, all levels of neshama. How much more so is this true of Zeis HaTorah Adam, where Adam is associated with Torah, that is emes, that there it's more obvious to see the reality, the truth, namely that every level of pshat there is the sod, and not as something independent but present in the pshat itself. I mean, this is the Rebbe's whole chiddush. In a diak in Rashi, Pshudush Mikra, we get this insight in Sod. I mean, the Rebbe is saying things that really weren't revealed before, but he does. This is Tavshin Chavdalat Manya before he started the Rashi Sichos. He's laying it out. This is the way it is. In every Nekuda, there are all four levels of Sod, Remes, Drushan, and Pshat. Continuing. Now, since with respect to this pasuk, so the drashas Chazal is Torah all the way down to Yikaris Tefillin. So we have to say that all of these levels exist forever, throughout the year. And therefore it's understood that just like the levels, the Tefillin and Yom Tov, they're all relevant year-round, and the Milah, the same is also true, since it's all one inyan, kipshutai. The simple meaning of light and the gladness and joy and respect, kipshuta. That's not the pshat that it was that way. Like now we're speaking at the guf pshat level, but we have the assurance, kain tiyelon. So it shall be, and not only a request, but an expression of assurance this year and in this place. Meaning that when we have the ruchnis dikinyan, the pnimius, that oiris Torah, simchas Yom Tov, which basically he says in simchas shal mitzvah, all the way to Yikaris Tefillin, then he goes on to say, then we have it all begashmis in a very illuminating way. But he's a mid-sentence saying. So we have these in Yonim the way they are, Baruchnius, like the Gemara says, in each of these statements of associating Eira with Torah and so on, when it comes to Tefillin, what's the pasuk? V'cheinu oimen, and so the pasuk says, V'roch la'am ha'aretz kishem Hashem nikra lecha v'yar mimeka. The pasuk says, the nations of the world will see the name of God is called upon you, and they will fear you. What name is God is called upon you? Says the Yerushalmi, says the Gemara, sorry. This is Tefillin Shebarash. So that brings the respect. Kipshuta. Fear. Kipshuta. And Pshuta, you caught us at the Pshat level. But it's certainly brought about when you fulfill the Yikar on a Ruchni's Dikya level. As it was talking at the time of Purim, that the dread of the Yidden fell upon their enemies. Why? Because Yidden conduct themselves according to Torah mitzvahs, which is that thing of Tefillin, that's the culminating one. Because Suksha Torah Tefillin, the whole Torah is compared to Tefillin. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Lamanti Torah Hashem b'ficha," about Tefillin. What you're going to say when you put in your Rebbeinu Tams? Torah Hashem b'ficha. So the whole Torah is compared to Tefillin. So it goes on to the mitzvahs b'chalal, the final v'yikarei l'tfil. What the Rebbe is saying now? That by observing it, beruchni, since it's all one Inyan, this certainly manifests begashmius. So then, as he concludes, it becomes lichtik and joyful by Yidin Kipshuta year round. Gimel. Now, since you cannot compare something as on the second day or the third day to the way it was in Purim the first time. Okay. She's saying now, since it's true it's year round, but still you can't compare to the way it is at its origin, to the way it's then repeated. Therefore, the Seder is. That when do we start the Simcha of Purim? In other words, when do we start the whole, let's bring this into the year, Kipshuta? We start after Chatzos on Purim. When we have already Tekfish Oles, the whole miracle in its full force is played out. And we have the intensity of a Tokvam. It's a Lashon Gemara. That's when the reader of the Megillah has to raise his voice. Balai lahu. That's Tekfish Oles. So that's the expression of the miracle. There's many stages to it, but the Tekif, the intensity, is already now towards the end of Purim. Everything is already being expressed. And we have the intensity of Eira and Simcha, Mesas and Vikar, to the extent of Chayv Inish B'Sumei, that the Simcha, which is fulfilled when? That means it's the whole Purim, but Pearl Mamashi fulfills it by Sudas Purim. When? At the end of Purim, they've been saying that's the Sudah we're doing now. Why do we now? Because now was the intensity of Purim, the culmination of Purim. And that's when we take all of this and we bring it into the year to come. And we mamshich in the year to come, starting with the 15th of Adar, the next day, when Kaim is Yed Bashli Musa, the moon is full, which means we're a keli for it. They were saying that we are the moon, we're a keli for this tremendous simcha and amshachas of Purim. And from the 15th of Adar, it's then drawn to the whole year. Shekain Tiyeh Lonu should be for us in a way of assurance. What? Oida and simcha and sas and yikar. With all of the details of it, al pisod and remes and drush, all the way to pshat, all the way down to below 10 tvachim, which is elam hazeh. There should be for a year of eira, of simcha, of sas and vikar. Next sikh, we're following. Too fast, too slow. We're good. Okay. Here's Dalit. And the aforementioned understood that in order there should be for Yidden, the Eid, Simcha, Sasim, Vikar, literally, so we have to have the Eid of Simcha, Sasim, Vikar, as Chazal explained it. Eid is Tefillin, Eid is Torah, all the way to Tefillin. It's like saying, in order for the body to be alive, so the Neshama has to be expressed in it. So in detail now, meaning to say we have to learn Torah in a way that Torah is called Eira. It's lichtig. It's lightful. I mean, Mekai mitzvahs tefillin, as you said before, tefillin means all mitzvahs. Because huksha, the whole Torah is compared to tefillin, as we mentioned. So how must it be? How must we observe mitzvah in a way of yikar? The pasuk doesn't say actually the word tefillin, but says the word yikar, meaning what's yikar? Two meanings. Number one, it's not, God forbid, a burden, or a person's paying off his obligations, his duty, and he does it without choice, forced. But it's something that's very precious and mechubed and honorable, like the two purushim in Yikar. One is honorable and precious. And not only when he's locked in his house, he's not locked, closeted in his house, on the base of Knesset, the base of Medrash, but rather, like the Gemara says, what does the Gemara say? What's the pasuk that the Gemara brings that brings out doing mitzvahs in a way that are precious and honored? The pasuk of Aroch La'me'aretz Keshev Hashem Nikra Lecha. The nations of the world will see the name of God is called upon you. Meaning that even when he's amongst the nations of the world, he shows them that the name of Hashem is called upon him, and for him it's precious. And machshiv, and he machshiv, no, he considers choshev and an honor to serve Hashem. the fact rather that Hashem gave him the possibility to fulfill his mitzvahs, this vikor elu tefillin is seen when, even by the Ummah Sa'ilam, because that's the pasuk the Gemara brings. This is so relevant. And this is the way that there should be for Yidden, the next page, literally, in physical life in this world, and manifested in nachas and children, and in health, and parnasa, and in abundance. Now, all of the aforementioned is, all the above is not just answered from Drashas Chazal and Teresh Baal Peh, but if you look at the simple story of the Megillah, when you read the Megillah B'Pashtos, you see an incredible thing. When Mordechai told Esther Amalka to go to the king to plead before him and to ask and request about her people, Esther says to Esther Amalka argues, she says that all of the servants of the king and all of the people in throughout the realm know that no man or woman can approach the king unbidden. And achas dosai, lahomis, there's achas dosai. This is his absolute and singular law. He must be called. Only if the king extends his golden scepter, then he lives. And I have been called to the king for 30 days. He's quoting the pasuk in the Megillah. The Rebbe says, this is a taina that's a pishuch norach. A Jew is commanded not to place himself in mortal danger, even if it's doubtful. And much more so in our case, where the Chukya Medina, the country's laws are achas dosai. You're asking for the death penalty to become unsummoned. The only exception is when you're called. And nonetheless, Mordechai argues, who knows if for this moment that you got the Malchus reached royalty. It's possible that the whole reason that you are in a situation bound up, they're stressing here, with all of the laws of the country. And part of those laws are that if you're not called, you can't come. And that's where you are, in the heart of Malchus. Is why? That you should do the opposite. You are there as part of the kingdom in order to defy it. And moreover, the way she goes to the king is also completely contrary to the whole conduct of Beis HaMalchus, of being the queen. Why? Esther was chosen, and Esther wants to what? She wants to curry favor with the king in order that he should effect Mivatal Gzeira, so she should do everything possible that she should find favor in his eyes. And nonetheless, what does she say? Before she goes to the king, she fasts for 3 days. I and my handmaidens will fast. So the Rebbe asks, why is she conducting herself in a way of the opposite, the laws of nature, in the Beis HaMalchus? Why? Because so Mordechai told her. And he was the Rosh Sanhedrin. In other words, so Torah paskins. And this is the way, page 139, to mevatel the gzeira, and to effect it should be oida v'simcha v'sas and vikor. As you learn from the story of Purim, literally, even without any drashas chazal, as they're explained in Teresh Baal Peh. The literal story tells you this. Now that is leading to something very powerful. And since, as the Megillah says, that Purim will never end, it's understood, therefore, that the first lesson is to learn from Purim is that the existence of the Jewish people is not because we have a sister in the White House, the Beis HaMelech, and not that Mordechai, we have a Jew, Mordechai, who's sitting B'Shar HaMelech at the gateway of the king, and neither that because our lot is we're okay because Achashverosh is a fool, or he was very clever, the two opinions in the Gemara. So that applies today to Moedik. All the things that we can use. So all these things that we just pointed out, that B'derech HaTeva are useful, it's only we have the Iker thing. And what's the Iker? To listen to the instructions of the Sanhedrin. Even if logic says it makes no sense, and logic says, he's quoting here from the Gemara, you have to listen to the Sanhedrin, even they say that the right is left and the left is right, and what he told Esther is completely illogical. That is the secret. And then the Derech HaTeva, if we need it, will work. So now the Rebbe is talking about an event that I don't know exactly what happened. We get the general idea. So very often, by Fabrenga, especially Purim, that the Rebbe addressed very powerfully at current events and failings, terrible failings on behalf of Jewish leadership. Now, the purpose of it was, I'm sure that was, did his work behind the scene, but this is my commentary here. First of all, these things need a public admonition because they're Chilul Hashem, and Chilul Hashem needs to have a public repudiation. And secondly, the Rebbe is educating us. The Rebbe is educating us how to deal with the world. So having said what he says, he continues now as follows. And here we see how the Lumas, the opposite of Kedusha, the Yetzer Hara, is Orum B'Manasa, is very cunning in his profession. What's the story? So the days of Purim come, and there should be a Kol Korah. There should be a Kol Korah, means a proclamation coming out of Jewish leadership to the Jewish people. So what ought to be the call? So the obviously should be, since we're talking about the Purim, Megillas Esther. That's printed. It's not a secret, Megillas Esther. Such that everybody can read what's written in Megillas Esther. And all those that know to read and understand that it should be ksav on a simple level, know and can read the story of the sequence of events. So it's plain, the plains, as we just pointed out, the story. So therefore, it should be that every leader, every mayor, every instructor, every rav should be publicized, a proclamation come out to Yidden and say that the message to learn from the story of Purim is that we have to have Eirez Torah, Simchas Yom Tov, which is Simchas Mitzvah, Sasin Zumila. The Rebbe stops here. Because he spoke about, he already elaborated somewhat on Eirez and Simchas Mitzvah. Now Mila. What's Mila? We don't reckon with this, that he's a small child. We didn't ask his opinion. And at 8 days old, we force him to go, compel in the way of Torah and mitzvahs. And how? In the way of bris olam, an eternal covenant. That's the message of Milah. And then Yikor. And all this is done is in a way of Yikor. It's precious and we're proud of it. Such when a Jew goes in the street, as he said earlier, the nations of the world will see. You can see in a Jew that the Torah mitzvahs is something that it's covered and it's yokar, he's proud and it's precious. And this is what this Kol Korah should say, a call to Yidden, that this is the way that we go in Eilam Hazeh Gashmi to fulfill the instructions of the Sanhedrin, the head of whom is Mordechai Yehudi, as explained in the Psukim, in the early Psukim, the later Psukim of the Megillah. That's what should be the proclamation. Instead of it, since they have to publish something in the newspaper, and the newspaper, especially English newspaper, will not print such a thing. So the Mahapchim, what's the message? This is it sounds like it's an Orthodox rabbinic association. It came out with a big proclamation. You try and get the sense of it. So what do they do? Instead of the message that the Rebbe say they should say, they do the opposite. And what's the message from the Megillah? Translating here. And they begin to learn from the Megillah's Esther how we have to relate to, I think that word means a dictator. And if I'm not mistaken, actually called Rabbi Shapiro, others weren't sure. But it seems, it's 1964. So Russia, what's the relationship to Russia? This didn't begin let my people go. The whole movement, which the Rebbe was very against. The protest. It has to be quiet diplomacy behind the scenes. You're aggravating them, and you're turning back the clock. And so many Jews that could have gotten that was very upset with Kahani, very upset. Letters to him and think that you're and begging, you're pushed, closing the door. Jews about to leave. The protest in New York, and people go, big heroes, close the door, delayed for who knows how long. Now, this isn't the protest. Maybe this is the beginning. This is a newspaper ad. It's part of, it seems part of that whole thing. But look what they say. So what did the proclamation say? The water be learned from Megillah Esther. So how to relate to someone who was a autocrat? That's the word, not autocrat. Yeah, dictator. Yeah, that's the word. Huh? Yeah. That he governs his state without consulting with the wise people with others of the Medina. How should be a conduct according to Sichos? I'm not sure if it's Rashi, possibly. And that's what they're saying. We learn from the Megillah how to deal with dictators. Ahasuerus being the dictator. And they don't mention one word in their proclamation about Mishleach Monos, Matanas Avyonim, Kriyas Megillah. How much more so they're embarrassed to mention Oida v'simcha v'sasam because, and there's no one that protests. No one opens their mouth to say anything. On the contrary, they see that this is printed in the newspaper and his name is on it, signed by some rabbi. So they consider this to be a Kiddush Hashem. Oh, the rabbi's name is Kiddush is in the newspaper. Because the newspaper printed the words of the Rav, which is what? That what's the lesson from Purim? Democratia. Democracy. We have to conduct ourselves and we have to oppose
dictatorship.
And with this, Chasal Mesechtas Purim, and that's the final bottom line. It's easy. I was playing with the words. It was being Chasal Siddur Pesach, which Babish doesn't say. You don't say but Chasal Mesechtas Purim, and this is the whole bottom line of Purim. In order to explain, and he continues to that, in order to explain the importance of democracy, so there are some people that can use their ability for this objective, which is a good thing, but it has nothing to do with Purim. In other words, in order to explain and to tout the virtue of democracy, it's its time and place, and there are people for that, but that's not the message of Purim. The Gemara stresses that even after the Nes of Purim, we were still akarte after the Chashverosh Shanan. That was not dismissing democracy at its place. But the story of Purim is we're still servants of Achashverosh, despite the Nes of Purim, which was a great Nes. And the nations of the world saw. Even after the Nes, we're still servants, like we were before. He remains, the Roiden remains, the dictator remains a dictator. Moishe Bekipa, Moishe Bekipa means he ruled over the whole world. Remains a Moishe Bekipa. And the Melech Tippish remained the same Tippish as he was before. Didn't become a democratic society. That's not the message of Purim. Didn't bring down the downfall of Chashverosh. It's the survival of Yidden and the message of Yidden. What affected the miracle? Instead, that he didn't allow Yidden to be Yehudim. He wanted them to worship Avodah Zarah. Like the Gemara says that anyone who denies Avodah Zarah is called Yehudi. Yehudi means to admit, to acknowledge. He acknowledges the Eibishter. So he didn't want that. The end was La Yehudim Haisa. The end was the Gzeira was nullified, and the Jews Kim of Kibalem, Balzarim was a reaffirmation of Torah. Matan Torah was ratified. And not like those that their shita, their philosophy is that children that are going to grow up and have their own opinion and become independent, you can't force them that they should be obligated to learn Torah and keep mitzvahs. You can't dismiss their opinion. You have to wait till they're older, and then they'll choose their way. In the same way that democracy is a matter of choice. If they want to learn, Chas v'shalom not learn Torah. So here we have, he's elaborating on Miller. Here we have the lesson from one of the Yanim of Pira, Sassan Zumila, the mitzvah of Milah is fulfilled when the child is 8 days old. And Bar Mitzvah should be done earlier. But why do you wait for 8 days? To wait till he's strong enough. Like Damam says in Meir Devuchim. Like the Medrash says they should live through one Shabbos. So it's really from birth that I've been saying. Absolutely, you have zero opinion in this. And likewise, with respect to the Dividim Purim Ma'ela, Shekimu v'Kiblai, the Yid accepted not just on them, but on their children. They accepted on their children. They didn't ask the kids. They said the opposite, complete opposite of democracy. Hepech demokratia legamri. And the reason, because we're speaking about Torah mitzvahs, so Torah mitzvahs we Hashem's servants, avodah heim, and it's not democracy that they have to make a vote and wait till the child is going to be a bardasa, is going to be mature, 13 years old in one day, and then he'll choose if he wants to start learning alabais and Torah Yiddishkeit or not. And before that, it's forbidden to compel him to in Yiddishkeit, negating this. And this is the message of the Megillah. That even though we had a sister in the Beis HaMalchus, and Mordechai is a Yish B'Shar HaMelech, and moreover the house of Haman was given to Mordechai. What happens? Mordechai sends a letter and a second letter, and he writes as Kol Toikef. He describes the whole intensity of the whole story and all of its power. And what's his message to Klal Yisrael then and forever? You should know they have to Mekayim all the inyanim that Yid will make a nefesh for. And it starts with being Kaif Avodah Zarah. And that makes you a Yehudi, and that's the message of Purim. A Zion. And not like those who want to explain, interpret things that are not shaykh to Purim, and not shaykh to him, and not shaykh to his congregation. This was the rabbi of a big community. Chavrei Kehillah. That's your message, Gewalt. And all so what is it? He just wants to he wants to, the whole agenda is to curry favor for the nations of the world. So the Rebbe says, with respect to the nations of the world, that's not the way they'll respect you. The only way is when they see the pasuk the Gemara brings, they see the name of Hashem is called upon you. Because without God, we are the smallest nations. And chesed, lumim, chatas, and any kindness they give us, that they will bestow upon us as its agenda, they'll just use you. They were saying, if it's not in your respect they have, if it's not based on the respect of your Yiddishkeit and Hashem, it's just using you. And the only way that we should assure that we are sheep among 70 nations and who survives is when they see the name of Hashem called upon us, and then they are in awe and respect us. And when do they see that Hashem is called upon you? It can't be just Yom Kippur and Shabbos and Yom Tov. Like a Bacha wrote to me, says, a Bacha wrote to me that I'm a weekend Jew. He was telling a story. From Friday afternoon till Monday morning, I have to go to school, go to university, and whatever it is, and then I can be involved in Yiddishkeit. But starting Monday in the morning, I have to go to public school, then I have to do homework, then I have to rest, then I have to play, and then I have to, I have to give a patch on the shoulder of my friend. This is the social life. He has no time to be a Jew until it comes the weekend. He's a weekend Jew. The Rebbe says, no, it has to be what? Shem Hashem Nikra Alecha Tamid. Just see where the Sichot ends here. Yeah, just finish it. On the contrary, this matzav that we are a sheep among 70 wolves is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Shabbos and Yom Tov, no less. No, even less than during the week, during the year. Sorry. It's much rather about matzav of being a sheep among 70 nations is even less, which means we're more vulnerable than. So you don't need so much then your Jewish pride. when you're, not interacting with the world. Seems to what he's saying. So if Shabbos and Yom Tov you need, Shem Hashem Nikar Alecha, much more so in an ordinary weekday. Now we'll continue Eisches and furthermore V'oid in your business. Okay, everybody's agreeing we should continue this for Purim. Not much far to go. Try and